Okay, we're back at the rabbit hole side of things, and we're working on doing the wiring for the high DC voltage, the 80 to 90 volts DC. And we got the 60 volts coming off the transformer here, and it's going to be going into the AC pins on this rectifier, which we mounted to the metal.
Where that
there.
With the hole that actually came into great use.
Yep. Okay, but then we need to take from one of these pins to one side of the resistor, and from the other pin to the field coil, and from this side of the resistor to the field coil.
Okay.
And this box had an extra thing on it. We've got our input AC coming in here, and that's switched. We got this, and we got nothing attached to it right now other than ground. So these two pins are completely open. So what we did was dug around and found a cable that goes into that slot. We don't really need the ground pin off of it for anything, but these two, we can actually run the DC into those. And up here on the speaker, I noticed that there was a little wire holder that was screwed into this spot right here. And with a little bit of quick eyeball measuring, we noticed that that clip would probably fit this wire, and that there's a second one there that's closer to where we want to be. So I'm going to try to put this here with the wire attached, and the wires that it needs to go to at the end of the day are right here. So we take our blue and our brown here, and those can go right to our coil wires, and we can do it all nice and tidy up here and get rid of these long extensions that someone put on at some point. And now instead we've got it on the two outside pins of this, and when the power supply is in place here, this cord just reaches right around and plugs into that spot. Hopefully it's just long enough, we'll see. Yeah, I think it'll work.
Nice.
So I've got the cable tied up here, took that ground line and looped it over, and it's got the pin, and this clip is conductive, so now the speaker frame, just the metal body of it, is connected to the ground pin here, and the ground pin on where it connects to is connected to our star ground for the whole system there. So this is now part of the chassis.
Very nice.
And I'm just tinning these wires a bit. Really awkward kind of way. Alright. We're gonna solder them to these metal clips. These are from like a terminal block. It's quite a bit of metal, so let's see if we get enough heat to do it. See that plastic starting to melt.
Which one?
Just got those little plastic bits.
Oh.
We also threw some heat shrink tubing on the lines coming out of the coil, the field coil. So there's heat shrink here ready to go over these joints when we put them together. I'm going to go brown to brown and blue to green. Okay, those are put together, but I need to get the heat shrink down over this exposed metal bits. When the previous person had extended these lines, they did it in old vinyl electrical tape. So we're going to do a little bit better job there. Got that. Heat gun takes a second to warm up.
It's like a glamorous hairdryer.
It is a hairdryer.
Oh. It's really quick.
Yep.
Oh, that's it?
Yeah, that's it.
Kind of anticlimactic.
Okay, so those are our DC lines up there, and its tension is taken care of there. And we've got ground to the speaker chassis. And these are now electrically safe. They can't short out in any way, shape, or form. So we're good.
Very nice.
And the way that we did it, we got plenty of slack for plugging into the power supply.
Okay.
Okie dokie. What's next? Wiring up stuff in the power supply. So we gotta get our DC rectified voltage out of the rectifier to this guy, and now we know where we're going with it. We're going over here.
Cool.
So I'm gonna need some wire.
Nice. The last two prongs of the rectifier, we've bent over, put a little heat shrink on the bottom so there's no connection with the other two rectifier wires. The capacitor, and what is this capacitor for?
Filtering or smoothing, however you want to think of it.
So voltage smoothing. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to solder that to the diode wires, and then those, or the rectifier wires rather, and then the rectifier wires, the ends of those are going to connect to the power resistor, right?
One of them goes to the one side of the current limiting resistor.
Okay.
The other side goes to one of our outputs off to the field coil, and the other output off to the field coil goes to the side of the current limiting resistor.
Now we have another stage of heat shrinking, just to prevent that bolt there that's right next to the capacitor from touching the rectifier wires, because the bolt is connected to ground.
Okay, so there's that. And then we've got heat shrink can come on.
We got the heat shrink at HSC Electronics in California when we were visiting last year. We got a, like, I don't know, 3 or 4 of these and a big old wad. Clearly we still have a bunch of it. So.
Okay. Well, that's all super safe because it's like heat shrink down to here, and then up at this joint, and then where those two come together as well. So that's all nicely done. Alright, so that's our positive side. And this is our negative side. And on these capacitors, there's a stripe on one side. That's the negative side. It's important that that's on the negative side. So these are polarized.
And where does that wire go to? Goes from the back there, yeah.
To
that.
the side of this, and then this side of the resistor goes to the other side of that. And that's our 90 volts DC output.
Alright.
That plugs in here up to the field coil.
Okay.
Okay, so I added the red wire on our positive side after the current limiting resistor, and we got the black wire added and all heat shrunk on there, and they come down and they go to the jack, and I'm just going to solder that up. Now this is where at some point in the future we may invert the polarity here, because this is the most convenient place to change it for the field coil. The field coil likes the polarity to be one way or the other, but it's really kind of hard to know what that's going to be. So for the moment we're just going to hook it up with our positive is coming out where on AC the live wire would be, and the negative is going to be where our neutral wire would have been, but it's DC. Okay, so that settles, theoretically, we'll see if it all works, but that settles the field coil supply part of things. Now that it's all in place, I'll very quickly step through it here. We've got AC coming in through the jack here, the IEC plug. The earth ground off of that goes to the chassis here, and it splits out here to the earth ground on the Leslie. It goes through the Leslie cable on the Amphenol connector right there, and it stars also over to here for the ground plug there, and that's the chassis ground for the speaker frame. Okay, so all the grounds are going to the same spot here and then out to earth ground on the house circuit. So the 120 AC is coming in these two lines into the big transformer, and we're tapping half line voltage here. So 60 volts AC is how this part of the transformer is set up. So that's not isolated, unfortunately, but it gets us where we need. So when it comes out of there, it's 60 volts AC, and that's dropping down into the bridge rectifier here. So it comes out of the bridge rectifier around 80 some volts, and we've got the big filter capacitor on those to help smooth that out a little bit. And then we've got 80 volts DC coming out of minus here, positive here. One side of it goes to the current limiting resistor, which is 10 ohms, and it's heat sunk to the case. The other side comes out there, so that's our negative, that's our positive, and those are going out to this female IEC connector, and we have the male side of it going into the field coil here. So 90 volts DC into that. So that's most of that. The other thing here is that the AC that's coming in off this plug to these terminals on the transformer are being jumped, the 120, over to these two pins on the Leslie. So that's where the Leslie is getting its 60 hertz, 120 volts AC power that it needs, is through that Amphenol connector. On this side, this is the next thing we need to do. We've got hidden back here the little bridge rectifier between the 8 volt AC pins off this side of the transformer. This one is isolated, and we got a big smoothing cap sitting here, and on the output here something like 10 volts DC, and that's what we need to wire up to go to the stuff we did earlier, the power cable heading off to the front subassembly that powers the preamplifier. That's where we're at the moment.
Alright, Whisker.
What?
What? Looks all finished.
Well, I soldered up this and added a little 9 volt plug to the end of it, and we'll use a 9 volt plug for the disconnect on the way to the preamp, and that'll be nice because we know that preamp works really well on 9 volt batteries. So there's always the option to just hook it straight up to a battery if you want to.
Nice.
Or a variable voltage supply, because the preamp behaves differently depending on how much voltage it has coming into it. If you give it 5 volts, it gets really crunchy. So
If you give it like
this is a nice
16,
solid 11
clean.
volts coming out of here, so it's kind of clean. You throw on a 9 volt battery, it'll get a little grungier.
Yep.
Alright, so basically everything's in there and everything's lined up so that nothing hits. So I gotta put the case back together now.
Okay.
which is a bit finicky, so this is probably not going to be elegant.
Bang, crash, boom, slam. It's like those old Batman.
It's got to be up under there. And that has to be over there. Okay.
That's not too bad.
Put those together nicely. Now we have to put the screws in. Unfortunately, these screws have to go basically into the wood. So it was less inconvenient to do that than it was to flip this in any other orientation. So the way that it connects to the chassis, I actually have to hollow out some holes for these 3 screws to go in. You can see they go along the side, so right now I can't set it down flush, but it goes there. We need to add a 9-volt connector for this. This wraps around, goes in there. But before we do any of that, we need to test the voltages coming out of here and coming out of there and make sure everything's working properly.
Okay, so we've got power going into the box, and we're testing to see how the power source...
Testing to see if the magic smoke comes out.
Okay, yes, that too. But
We got a solid 81.5 ish volts DC. I just happen to have the probes in backwards. So there's our negative side there. So just about 82 volts DC with no load on there. And it doesn't appear to be smoking, popping, smoldering, or exploding.
should we measure that too?
We can.
So we should theoretically get like 8 to 10 volts here, I think.
11, I believe.
Nice.
So we got 11.5 volts DC on this plug.
Very nice.
And all this is being done through a single transformer, which is nice.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one thing I didn't add on is a bleed resistor.
What's that?
To let this big capacitor go down. So if you pop it off,
Okay, I'm gonna turn this
I got
off.
it off here.
Oh. That's the cap discharging.
But it only discharges because the meter's hooked up.
Right,
If the meter wasn't hooked up, it would just sit there and hold that 80 volts charge in that capacitor.
right.
So
For
yeah.
better or for worse.
Yeah. Of course, the same issue is going to be on this.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. Apart from that, it seems like it's doing okay.
Cool.
Now we have to actually get it tested with the amplifier and stuff. So, we're going to do a little bit of that. Okay, so one thing we have to do here, because by their very nature, 9-volt connections are inverting, we actually have to flip the polarity here.
Reverse the polarity on the phase inducers.
But once we get this heat shrink tubing in place, it'll be very clear to people which one is positive and which one is negative.
Right.
So we're correcting it under the hood in a very clean way, but to the end user or the future engineer who's trying to figure this thing out, it'll be obvious what's what. You never know when you're gonna have to figure out what you did. So So you can still see them right up there at the end.
Mm-hmm.
So the secret is visible, but
Okay.
it's still obvious.
Yep.
Okay, so now we get to, well, hook some more stuff up, so we'll be back.
Testing time. We've got the power going in. Ooh, big finger. Power going in. That's going to the powering the field coil speaker. Then we've
120 volts coming in this cable, Amphenol cable into the amp, and the tubes are lighting up, so we know that the 120 is okay. And I'm not hearing any strange hums or smelling anything or any heat.
Should we try plugging the guitar in?
That's basically, I think, the next step is to see if, I mean, I got the preamp turned all the way down. I have no idea what the volume on the post is set to.
There we go.
That's the Leslie hack volume control to the front. Appears to be working. It's the first time we've had a chance to test that. And then we've got over here, that's the preamplifier is now turned up, so the static should sound different. It's a little bit louder. And because the speaker's making noise, we know the field coil is working.
Mm-hmm.
So now we
Plug her in.
try guitar, I guess.
Okay. Rock on. We got the top piece, we got the bottom piece, and we've got the power supply here, and it all fits together. And now all we have to do is clean it up,
hook all the wires back up,
yep,
put it in the case,
yep. to see my lassie, yeah. Her face is going to make my day. Everybody's telling me, son, bring her home to meet your mum. Oh, she flutters my heart and makes me cry. Have you ever seen a grown man cry? No, you have tonight. I'm off to see my lassie, yeah. She makes me smile through the day. When I am sad and I am down, she turns my frown up right side round. Oh, she flutters my heart and makes me cry. Have you ever seen a grown man cry? No, you have tonight. I'm off to see my lassie, yeah. She sings like heaven's angels gay. Her voice soothes me through the night when darkness tries to give me fright. Oh, wanna see my lassie, yea. I've almost memorized the way to melt her heart and change her mind, so she'll agree on the best she can find. Oh, she flutters my heart and makes me cry. Have you ever seen a grown man cry? Now you have tonight. Flutters my heart and makes me cry. Have you ever seen a grown man cry? Now you have tonight. Oh, she flutters my heart and makes me cry. Have you ever seen a grown man cry? Now you have tonight. What do you think? We post videos all the time, so don't forget to subscribe. And follow us on Twitter at TYMKRS.